Welcome to the Awakening Together channel here on YouTube. This is our Awakening Together weekly gathering. Each and every week we have a different minister who speaks. If you'd like to attend our services live, please visit our website awakening-together.org. Click on Online Sanctuary on the main menu. Then, How to Enter the Sanctuary. Our services are held Sundays at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary.
Good morning, everybody. How are ya? Nice to see you. Welcome to our Sunday gathering. All right. Welcome again. Nice to see everybody. So the first thing I want to do is to go over our statement of purpose for Awakening Together. And then I usually like reading the about Awakening Together as well. So Awakening Together is a universal assembly of peers dedicated to recognizing and embracing universal wisdom, regardless of the form in which it appears. We are also dedicated to recognizing the ways we deny universal wisdom by adopting personal beliefs and biases. We want to recognize these limitations so we can free ourselves from them and open to the continuous flow of universal wisdom. We are an assembly of equals, joined in common purpose, awakening to one true self. Within an appearance of many faiths, many cultures, and many symbols, we seek to discern one truth and to rest in its embrace. And I have selected core value number 3. We accept one true self, which is one presence or being, non-dual, without a beginning or end, and absolutely changeless. We live this value by practicing letting go of the belief in the individual self as who we are. And then I have some announcements. I just have to chuckle at as I see everything unfold here on Zoom. If you guys really could see me like 15 minutes before this, trying to rearrange this room, I truly am the Wizard of Oz behind the screen. I tell you what, and right now everything here is set up and it's working okay, but it is one cat hop away from crashing. So I just want you to know that. My laptop's up on a pillow and I got a little stand here and with a mouse and all that stuff. So it is, I look at some of you guys that do this and your room looks like a little studio, and I'm just not quite sure how that lighting gets done. I play with all the lights in here all morning long to try and find the right mix. So anyway, I am getting better because I used to like leave this house and go to my office, and so things are settling down a little bit, but there's still a lot of gymnastics. So I appreciate your guys' patience, and I'm just sure it's all going to be just fine. It just is. So here we go. Now we will say a nice prayer together. Join me for our invocation. Dear Father, we thank you for this day, for these moments that we've come together. We ask for help in laying aside and surrendering all the chatter, all the lists of things to do, all the plans. And we ask instead that we are able to just sit here together in the stillness and in the love. I turn this time over to you, and I ask only that I be a vehicle for what you would have me share. May I teach what I would learn, and may all ears hear what is important for them today. In love, amen. All right, and I just read chat a little bit ago and discovered that y'all didn't hear the trailer, so I apologize for that. That's okay, you can hear me now. My sound is good now? Okay, all right. Our reading today is going to be by Glenda, and we are reading from, it's a book, a Ram Dass book, and the title of the book is Grist for the Mill, and this is a chapter in the book called Nobody's Special. And I discovered Ram Dass early on in this journey, and I look back now when I read him today and think about reading him in the past, and I really didn't have a clue, but I did know that his tone made it a lot less threatening than some other stuff that I had heard or read. And so I always enjoyed that tone, kind of an urging to do the things, to let go of the ego mind, pointers to do that, but yet this kind of detached point of view of do it or don't, it's kind of up to you, and no judgment. So we are going to listen to Glenda read Nobody's Special. Thank you, Glenda.
Good morning. Nobody's Special, Chapter 11. We are in training to be nobody special, and it is in that nobody specialness that we can be anybody. The fatigue, the neurosis, the anxiety, the fear, all come from identifying with somebodyness. But we have to start somewhere. It does not seem that we have to be somebody. It does seem that we have to be somebody before we can become nobody. If we started out being nobody at the beginning of this incarnation, we probably wouldn't have made it this far. Blue babies are examples of nobody special. They just don't have the will to breathe or eat or live. For it's that force of somebodyness that develops the social and survival mechanisms. It's only now, having evolved to this point, that we learn to put that somebodyness, that whole survival kit, which is called the ego, into perspective. When I was a Harvard professor, I would spend all my time thinking. I was paid for that. I would have clipboards, tape recorders to collect all my thoughts. Now I'm becoming more and more simple as I quiet. Sometimes there seems to be nobody in there at all. I just sit. And then when something needs to happen, it happens, even thinking or speaking, and I just witness it. It's very far out when we begin not to think, or the thinking is going by and we're not identified with being the thinker. At first, we really think we've lost something. It's a while before we can appreciate the peace that comes from the simplicity of no mind, of just emptiness, of not having to be somebody all the time. We've been somebody long enough. We spend the first half of our lives becoming somebody. Now we can work on becoming nobody, which is really somebody. For when we become nobody, there is no tension, no pretense, no trying to be anyone or anything, and the natural state of the mind shines through unobstructed. The natural state of the mind is pure love, which is not other than pure awareness. Can you imagine when we become that place we've only touched through our meditations, when we are love, we finally acknowledged who we really are. We've cleared away all the mind trips that kept us being who we thought we were. Now everybody we look at, we're in love with. We experience the exquisiteness of being in love with everybody and not having to do anything about it because we've developed compassion. Compassion is to let people be as they need to be without changing them. The only time we might need to intervene with people is when their actions are limiting the opportunities for other human beings to be free. And then the way in which we intervene is very mindfully and open-heartedly. For if we're busy being somebody trying to change someone, we're just creating more anger. If we are nobody special, but it is our dharma to oppose injustice, then it is merely an act of dharma. And not for a moment do we lose that total love for the other person who is not other than us. For being nobody, there is nobody we're not. Had we sufficient discipline, we could pursue the steepest of paths to get rid of all the ways we cling to models of ourselves. We could just sit, Zen Buddhism, and every thought that comes by that creates another reality, we would let go. And clinging to none, we would know enlightenment. Or we might pursue the path of Ramana Maharshi. Who am I? I simply ask, who am I? Who am I? And slowly we watch ourselves be other than all the ways in which we identify ourselves as a body, organs, emotions, social roles. We see it all. We keep disassociating from it until we are left with the thought of I. I am the thought I. This path takes incredible discipline, for as we have freed ourselves from our bodies and our emotions, we're just about to drop this last of our, and we're just about to drop this last thought of I. Our bodies grab us again. We're back in our habitual thoughts about our bodies, our identities. Most of the time, when we watch our mind, we find it keeps grabbing at things and making them the foreground, and everything else becomes the background. When we're reading, we're not listening. When we're listening, we're not seeing. When we're remembering, we forget where we are. But can we function when the world is all background and awareness itself is foreground? When awareness is identified with thoughts, we only exist in a certain time-space dimension. But when awareness goes behind thought, we are able to be free of time and see thoughts appearing and disappearing, just watching thought forms come into existence, exist, pass away in a millisecond. And when the intensity, concentration allows us to see the space between two thoughts, we see eternity. There is no thought there. We realize that thoughts exist against the backdrop of no thought, against the backdrop of emptiness, of nothingness. We exist. And there we are at the edge of perceiving who we are. Then we face one of the greatest fears we'll ever confront, the fear of our own extinction, the fear of ceasing to exist, not just as a body, but even as a soul. It is similar to the statement made by Hung Po about people approaching this point, that they become fearful to enter into what they consider the void, distress that once they let go into it, they will drop unendingly, that there will be nothing to stay their fall, not realizing the void is the Dharma itself. But as we're ready for the ultimate mystic door, the inner door of the seventh temple, we say, I am not this thought. We let go of even the great fear of non-existence. The senses are just working by themselves. There is hearing occurring. There is no listener. There is seeing, but there is no seer. The senses are just all doing their thing, but there's nobody home. If the mind thinks, I am aware, that is recognized as just another thought, a part of the show passing by. It's not awareness itself. Thoughts are going by like a river, and awareness simply is. When we become just awareness, there is no more me being aware. By letting go of even the thought I, what is left? There is nowhere to stand and no one to stand there. No separation anywhere. Pure awareness, neither this nor that. Just clarity and being. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenda. Thank you, Glenda. That was awesome. It is a pretty powerful chapter in that book. I enjoyed listening to that. I had read it recently myself, but listening is very powerful. All right. So we are going to chat a little bit about this idea of letting go of specialness. And I think initially when this topic came to mind, it was about when we are triggered to recognize that the trigger is brought about because of a desire and an attachment to this idea of being special. And so we become grateful once again for the trigger itself. Because only with the trigger can that subconscious stuff be brought up in order to be looked at. And that is the purpose of the trigger. And I used to think that the trigger's purpose was just torment. That's what I thought it was. That's what I thought its job was. And it does a pretty good job of that if that is the point of view that you come from. And I think that point of view gets developed more and more when we let it blindly guide us, right? And we are pinging off of those reactions. And an emotional reaction will ping another thought that we follow. And that is truly a nightmare. It's just a nightmare to live within that. And I know for myself, a huge part of this journey has been, and we talk about it a lot here, just being willing to look at how the ego patterns, the thoughts, the feelings, all that stuff, see how it plays in our own life. And that has been a big portion of my journey. So it has come through in, journaling has probably been one of my biggest practices to kind of drill down and see mostly that a trigger of some kind when it is, I am putting the emphasis on it being outside of me, right? The trigger from a coworker, the trigger from a husband, the trigger from a mom, whatever that trigger might be. And I believe that in that moment, the trigger comes, I feel the dissonance within, and I, quicker than you could even realize, blame that person for that feeling, right? And even intellectually, I can know that that is not true. I think we get a pretty good idea of the intellectual stuff around here because we are listening to it a lot. We're reading about it a lot. But just having that intellectual understanding has never been enough for me to release the belief that, yes, they are indeed responsible for this feeling. So the tools of, drilling down into, root cause, right? Where's the upset coming from? Learning to remove the blame entirely from the individual or the form in which I think has created this upset, and looking solely within has been very helpful. And I have been able to learn that my feelings are a very accurate representation of my thoughts. That's probably what I have learned the most through journaling. That if you are feeling attacked all the time, then that feeling of being attacked all the time is, of course, going to create thoughts of defense, right, to protect you. So I have learned to understand the problem by looking at the problem. And those have been very powerful tools for me. Sharing that stuff that is discovered with other people is also very helpful. Finding that I'm not alone, that we're experiencing the same stuff, that we get caught in these loops of attack, defense, fear, all that stuff. Recognizing that all that really is tied to the desire to be special, the desire to be unique, the desire to be an individual, is kind of new territory for me. I didn't quite understand that. I've discovered recently that part of my desire to let go of ego has truly been to become a better human being. And that's not a bad agenda for a period of time. But something about, I am facilitating Inner Ramana on the forum. And this is my 4th time through Inner Ramana. And there is something about this time through, me reading it, that has shifted a bit to a clarity about what is really being taught here in Awakening Together. And Regina helped me with this with her last homily as well. This idea of truly letting go of the personal self as who I am. And so in order to do that, once again, I have to watch the thoughts come up. And the tools that I have learned have been helpful for that. I still can see those. I can still see what it's leading to. What's the desire, right? Say it's a desire to be right. Okay, so I get in a little altercation with my husband about, oh, who knows? It could be anything, right? So immediately we both go to our phones, right? That's just what we do. We're sitting on the couch, we have an argument, and we both reach for our phones so Google can solve who's right, who's wrong for us. And we did that. We did that just yesterday. And I can't even remember what it was. But I was able to see that, and I hope I can articulate. This is my biggest challenge with sharing this stuff, is I have a hard time finding words to articulate. But what I was able to see, finally for the first time, was that my whole drama with my husband, the need to be right, the feeling less than sometimes when I perceive that he is thinking I didn't do something right, whatever that might be. That whole dance that we do serves only to reinforce the idea of Kelly. I never saw that so clearly before, that all of it is just trying to reinforce this idea of Kelly. So when I used to look at that, I mean, even way back early in recovery, right? And we talk about recovery around here a lot. And even in recovery and my time with therapists, because I did spend my time there helping me see some of this stuff. The therapist I had was great, but I do think sometimes a therapist thinks their job is to create a healthier ego. And once again, there is nothing wrong with that. And I am, if it can help alleviate suffering for anybody, then that's its purpose. And then that's got to be a pointer towards truth for sure. But we would dissect these things about relationships, and especially the marriage relationship. We would dissect those things in terms of a healthy ego, right? That a healthy ego would set a boundary. A healthy ego would make sure that it communicated to the other one that was not acceptable to say those words that might have triggered me. And that, once again, I am not saying any of this stuff is wrong or unnecessary, but it is certainly a different slant to go into all of those upsets, all of those different forms of upset, and try and solve each one of those forms of upset. Because when we would do that, we were totally solving those forms of upset from the point of view of Kelly, right? We were looking through Kelly's filter. We were going back to Kelly's childhood. We were doing all that stuff. So we could get Kelly a little bit healthier and be able to interact in these relationships feeling a bit safer. And those were great goals. But guess what? It's 20 years later, 20 plus years later, and I'm still in the same relationship. And those triggers are still there, right? All of that work, all of that looking, all of that has not removed those triggers. So being able to see that instead of going into all of the individual forms, that we just go into the one form that is this idea and belief in Kelly as an individual, may be a bigger part of the solution. And I would like to share a little bit of inner Ramana that has helped me see some things. Like I said, I have all this stuff going on that happens here, and I have a hard time with the words to describe it, and inner Ramana does a pretty good job of that. So we are going to read a little bit about what really got my attention this last week, right? So there's a couple pieces, but first, this was about the changing of circumstances, because I have always struggled with that in times of stress, in times of grief, in times of pain. I get this very strong idea that I need a new job, I need a new marriage, I need a new house, I need whatever. I need something to change, and it needs to change quick, or I am going to go down in flames, right? That's how it feels to me. So one of the things that came through to me very helpful was, this is from the Exposing the I Thought. So one delay thought that the I thought provides as a means of survival, right? So that's survival to keep this whole thing going, is I must change my circumstances in order to do the work necessary to relinquish thoughts of I. And then inner Ramana shares, but I would encourage one to ask, who must change circumstances? Certainly, if one asks this question, he will find that I, who feels individual and separate from this circumstance, feels the circumstance must change. Upon discovering this, one can see he is being tempted by the distraction of the I thought, and he can choose to return to his mantra instead. And every circumstance is appropriate for letting go of the false I thought, because every circumstance is being experienced now. And now is always the time to turn the attention from I thinking back to concentrated stillness in the mind. And then knowing this self by going back to the stillness in the mind before this lovely little creation of Kelly is the goal that we seek. So it was like I read that for the first time recently. And then the next was clarity on purpose. So it introduces once again that the practices of mantra and surrender are used as tools or means to gently break the attachment to the mind. The mantra and surrender are gentle means that allow you to break the attachment to mind while living the life that mind has given you to live. This is like being set free from bondage, and yet no outer changes were required for freedom to be realized. So no circumstance has to change in order to be freed from these triggers. That's pretty miraculous to me, really. Once again, I say I intellectually understood that, but I understand it now in my heart. And then it goes on to say, this does not mean that there will not be outer changes, It simply means it is realized that the outer changes did not result in freedom. So it is the clarity on the idea that changing circumstances to alter our internal condition does not change the internal condition. And another thing that finally dawned on me is we would not be guided to make a change just because we were triggered by it. I mean, that's what my guidance was, that we would not be guided. We would be guided only if the guidance or the circumstance change was great, was a better situation for the whole, right? Not necessarily just for God. So Holy Spirit may lead me at some point in time to another job or another circumstance of some kind. But it would be because that was the timing for that was right, not because I was being triggered by all this stuff and I needed a break. I needed to catch a break. So that, like I said, that has been very helpful for me. That is reminding me, once again, to use the trigger as the gift that it is intended. And that is hard to say, right? When, I'm still not a big fan of negative emotions. I just don't, sometimes, and this came to me the other day when this clarity was coming and my ego would pop up and say, so if you're in a situation that is causing discomfort, and you choose instead to stay in it and process it through these tools, it feels kind of like the descriptions I've heard of the aesthetics, right? Putting yourself through circumstances that are, dire and challenging and even painful in order to awaken. And the guidance for me was that if you use the tools, and then the piece that I am now just seeing is much more important, is the trigger happens, which causes the discomfort. And I used to stop at looking at the trigger. Okay. And there is some relief in that. Just seeing it sometimes will help it go. But recently, in the teachings of Inner Ramana, and also in the Ram Dass reading, the reminder is to reflect back into the stillness instead. And as you do that, then that does bring relief of the contraction almost immediately when I'm willing to do that. That is the point, right? That's the clarity, and that is the point of the tools. And that's the point of, and I've seen it come through recently in listening to the satsang. I listened to that recording last week, and the reminder that we join and listen to truth, that gives us a moment to sit in that stillness and that reflection and relieve that contraction. And we need more of that time spent in relief to be reminded of who we are. And when we do that, or when I do that, then I discover that I am much more aware of the false I because of the contrast in the way it feels. And so I am more willing, desire increases, to reflect back and spend more time in the stillness. Now, the challenge for me, and I have not kept this secret from any of y'all, meditation is a challenge for me. It is hard for me to sit and close my eyes. I can do pretty good with I can do good with mindfulness, and that's very helpful, and that's probably saved my emotional bacon more than once or twice, right? But I feel this calling to grow in that, and yet the resistance. So that is my journey right now, is to continuously ask questions about that. You know, who's resistant? Why? And, you know, look back and, you know, see that it is the desire. My dogs are home. It is the desire to be, once again, Kelly, just to be Kelly. And yeah, that's it. So that is the reminder of specialness. Specialness I used to think was, you know, I used to view it only through the lens of romantic love. That was my first introduction to it, I think, either through the Course or hearing people talk about the Course. I'm not exactly sure. But specialness was just about the pain that we experienced in these relationships. And now I'm beginning to see that specialness is just this idea of Kelly. It's not necessarily just the idea of wanting to be noticed or wanting to be seen or wanting to be heard or wanting to get her way or wanting to be right. All those are little aspects of that, but that the real specialness is just wanting to be Kelly. And of course, wanting you to acknowledge that too, that I am Kelly. And in that, I'm a little special. And so there's plenty of work to do, obviously. So that's all I got there. I want to once again thank Glenda for doing my reading. Appreciate that very much. And we are going to do our next song, our contemplation song, and that's going to be Empty Me by Jeremy Camp. And this is a time, obviously, to donate if you feel called to do so. Simon will put the links in the chat box so you can donate, and to Awakening Together if you feel called. We do operate on donations. Thank you. Thanks for all the lovely comments. Ruby cracked me up. She says, I would call you by your name, but you know who you are. That was funny. No name. All right. We have a little bit of time. If anybody would like to share on what's on your mind, on your heart, that would be great.
Hi, Kelly. Can you hear me okay? I'm in the car.
Yes.
All right. I just so appreciate your homilies. This, especially, really just the practical pointing to how we develop the person. Such a lovely demonstration of desire to be right, how it creeps in, where it creeps in, and that it, while all of that lovely stuff that was done before looking at personhood, this pointing right at who I am as a person, who I believe I am. Sorry, I think is the right words. What I believe this person is really the only undoing necessary anymore. And it just so practical. I've never read Ram Dass, and that piece on specialness was just glorious. Thank you for this, Kelly. It was just beautiful.
Thank you, Rhoda.
Letting go.
Thank you. Nice to hear your voice. Safe travels. Part of the, there was a song that Sina played. I think it was the one right before we started. The gentleman on the mountain, I can't remember, but he was singing about now, about loving now. I love now and wanting to be in the now. Yeah, freedom song. Oh, beautiful. Yeah, that's perfect. And I think that is probably something that has become really clear, which is why I think the mindfulness, even just the mindfulness in our daily walk, is very helpful, because it certainly is designed to bring us here and now, and that is extremely helpful. But when I do look at those individual triggers at times and try and trace those back, it does seem to be that it is something in the past that I'm still trying to fix. And to just be able to let it go in the now and be here now and reflect on the quiet. That's it. Boy, that is, there's a reading later on in Inner Ramana that calls it, that is the, I think it says the easy way, right? Is to reflect back on truth when we get triggered. Once again, trigger is designed to remind us to surrender. That's its purpose. That's its new purpose. And if I can hold that as its sole purpose, to remind me to surrender, then it can certainly serve the awakening as opposed to serving the egoic structure and reinforcing that. Anybody else? All right, I think I'll have Sina play our closing song, and then want to encourage everybody to stick around for fellowship. I'm unable to stay. I get to work today, which is a great thing. Use me. So that's what I'm going to do. So I have to get ready to go do that. Thank you, Jewel and Sina. I had never heard that live version. That was beautiful. Thank you. All righty. I am going to let go of the mic, and I am not quite sure who's doing fellowship. Is it you, George? Or Kate? You don't know. Someone will take the mic and chat you up. Love you guys. Gotta go. And have a good day, and I'll see you tonight at Movie Watchers.
You've been watching our online gathering. It happens weekly on Sundays at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time. To join us live in the sanctuary, visit our website, awakening-together.org. You'll want to click on Online Sanctuary in the main menu, and then in the drop-down menu, look for How to Enter the Sanctuary. Right there at the top of the page is a clickable link. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary and join with you in fellowship. Thank you again for watching. Also, please know that if you'd like to stay connected via the Awakening Together channel here on YouTube, You can subscribe and hit the bell for more notifications. We hope to see you in the sanctuary.